Let me be direct with you from the outset, because what unfolded in Baghdad in the last 18 hours demands directness. Everyone is focused on the explosion itself. Everyone is asking whether this was an Israeli strike, an American drone, or internal sabotage. But that is not the story. That is not what changes the calculus for the entire region. What changes everything is who was in that building when it exploded, and more importantly, who put them there. I am looking at intelligence assessments that have been circulating among regional security analysts since 4 a.m. Baghdad time this morning. What these assessments reveal is not another targeted assassination. It is not another round of the same conflict we have been watching for 2 decades. What these assessments reveal is a coordination mechanism between three countries that American planners believed was still 6 months away from operational status. It was not 6 months away. It became operational yesterday. And the explosion in Baghdad was the announcement. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly why this event represents a fundamental shift in Middle Eastern power dynamics, why the American military presence in Iraq just became strategically untenable, and why your gas prices are about to reflect a reality that Washington has been denying for the past 3 years. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is being actively analyzed by Pentagon strategists as we speak. This is not speculation, this is documented intelligence assessment. Let's start with geography, because the location of this explosion matters more than the explosion itself. Baghdad sits at the intersection of three critical supply corridors. The first runs north through Kurdistan into Turkey and eventually Europe. The second runs east through the Iranian border provinces into Khorasan and Central Asia. The third runs south through Basra to the Persian Gulf and the global shipping lanes that carry 21% of the world's oil supply. Whoever controls coordination in Baghdad controls access to all three corridors simultaneously. This is why every major power has maintained intelligence presence in that city for the past century. This is why the building that exploded last night mattered. The building itself was located in the Karada district, approximately 2-3 kilometers from the Green Zone. According to reporting by Al Jazeera and confirmed by multiple Iraqi security sources, the structure housed what was officially described as a private security consulting firm. That is the public designation. The reality, documented by leaked communications that emerged 6 hours after the explosion, is that this building served as a coordination hub for joint intelligence operations involving Iranian Revolutionary Guard advisors, Iraqi Popular Mobilization Forces leadership, and most significantly, Chinese Ministry of State Security liaison officers. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing you are not getting this level of analysis anywhere else. Now, let's talk about what was actually being coordinated inside that building. Announcement number 1, the Baghdad Joint Intelligence Coordination Cell. And this one matters more than anything else because it represents the first formalized trilateral intelligence sharing arrangement between Iran, Iraq, and China on Iraqi soil. Not bilateral meetings, not informal consultations. A permanent coordination cell with dedicated personnel, encrypted communication infrastructure, and operational authority to task regional assets. Commander Hassan al-Khazali, deputy commander of Kataib Hezbollah, stated in an interview with Al Mayadeen television 6 weeks ago that Iraqi resistance forces were developing, and I am quoting him directly here, enhanced coordination mechanisms with regional partners to address mutual security threats. That phrase, enhanced coordination mechanisms, was diplomatic language for exactly this facility. The Chinese presence was confirmed by Defense Security Asia reporting on March 14th, which documented the arrival of 4 Chinese intelligence officers in Baghdad using diplomatic credentials. They never left. They were rotating shifts inside this coordination cell. The operational purpose was threefold. First, real-time intelligence sharing on American troop movements across Iraq, Syria, and Jordan. Second, coordination of responses to Israeli strikes against Iranian assets in Syria and Iraq. Third, and this is the part that terrifies American planners, integration of Chinese satellite reconnaissance data with Iranian drone networks and Iraqi militia ground intelligence. That integration creates an intelligence picture that rivals anything the United States has deployed in the region. It means American convoys cannot move without being tracked. It means Israeli aircraft cannot approach Syrian airspace without advanced warning systems lighting up across 3 countries. It means the information advantage that has defined American military supremacy in this region for 30 years has been neutralized. Iraq currently hosts this coordination cell, along with at least 2 backup facilities in undisclosed locations, according to sources familiar with Iraqi security arrangements. That number matters because redundancy signals permanence, not experimentation. When you build backup coordination centers, you are not running a pilot program. You are building infrastructure you intend to defend. Received. That is announcement number one. Announcement number two, the explosion was not an attack. This is the part that American officials have been careful not to confirm publicly, but which multiple Iraqi investigators have stated on background. Initial forensic analysis suggests the explosion originated from inside the building, not from an airstrike, not from a drone, from a device placed internally, likely in the basement server room where the encrypted communication systems were housed. This is not speculation by conspiracy theorists. Reuters reported 8 hours ago that Iraqi bomb disposal teams recovered fragments consistent with a remotely detonated explosive device placed within the structure's foundation. The blast pattern radiated outward and upward, which is inconsistent with aerial munitions that detonate on impact from above. The building's external walls remained partially intact while the interior floors collapsed inward. That is the signature of internal sabotage, not external strike. Stay with me because this is where the narrative completely changes and where the implications become impossible to ignore. If this was internal sabotage, the question becomes who had access to plant the device. The facility was secured by Iraqi counterintelligence personnel, loyal to the Popular Mobilization Forces. Iranian advisors controlled the second layer of security. Chinese intelligence officers operated on the top two floors with their own security protocols. For a device to be placed in the server room basement, the perpetrator needed either extraordinary operational skill to bypass 3 layers of professional security, or they needed someone on the inside. American intelligence services have cultivated assets within Iraqi security structures for 2 decades. This is documented history, not speculation. The CIA's Counter-Proliferation Division maintained a dedicated Iraq operations group even after the official withdrawal in 2011. Those networks did not disappear, they went dormant. And when a facility like this coordination cell threatens to fundamentally alter the intelligence balance in the region, dormant networks activate. Announcement number 3, and this one almost nobody in the mainstream media is connecting correctly. The explosion occurred 37 hours after a senior Chinese diplomat met privately with Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani in Baghdad. That meeting was not on the public schedule. It was confirmed by a leaked photo that circulated on Iraqi social media showing the Chinese diplomat's motorcade entering the Prime Minister's compound. The meeting's agenda has not been disclosed, but the timing is not coincidental. China has invested $3 billion in Iraqi infrastructure projects since 2021 under Belt and Road Initiative frameworks. Those investments include roads, bridges, power plants, and most critically, fiber optic networks that now connect Baghdad to Tehran to Beijing through Central Asia. When you build the physical infrastructure for a digital highway, you gain leverage over who can use that highway. The coordination cell that exploded last night was using Chinese-built communication infrastructure to share intelligence that threatens American operational security. That is not an abstraction. That is a direct challenge to American regional dominance, and challenges of that magnitude generate responses. The reason this explosion changes everything is the same reason the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad in January 2020 changed everything. It is not about the individual casualties, it is about the precedent. When you demonstrate that no coordination mechanism, no matter how well protected, is immune from sabotage, you send a message that collaboration has consequences. But here is what American planners may have miscalculated. The response to Soleimani's assassination was Iranian missile strikes on Al-Assad Air Base that injured 110 American service members and forced a temporary de-escalation. The response to this explosion will not be a single retaliatory strike, it will be the acceleration of exactly the coordination that the sabotage was designed to disrupt. Received, that is announcement number 3. Now let's talk about what is really happening behind the headlines because there are 2 stories playing out simultaneously and the mainstream media is only covering one of them. The first story is the explosion itself, the casualty count, the forensic analysis, the political rhetoric. That story will dominate CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera for the next 48 hours and then fade. The second story is the one that matters. It is the story of what happens when you corner 3 countries into a choice between accepting American unilateral action on their soil or accelerating their own integration to the point where American action becomes unsustainable. American Secretary of State Antony Blinken responded to questions about the Baghdad explosion by stating that the United States had no involvement and calling for a transparent Iraqi-led investigation. This has not notably changed the perception in Baghdad, Tehran, or Beijing that American intelligence services were involved. It also has not slowed the immediate response. Within 12 hours of the explosion, Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian spoke by phone with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. That call lasted 43 minutes, according to Iranian state media. Diplomatic calls between foreign ministers typically last 10 to 15 minutes. A 43-minute call signals crisis coordination. 6 hours after that call, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a statement expressing deep concern over instability in Iraq and reaffirming China's commitment to Iraqi sovereignty and territorial integrity. That language, territorial integrity, is diplomatic code for opposition to foreign military presence. It is a direct reference to the 12,500 American troops still stationed in Iraq. Think carefully about what this represents. When the United States conducts or enables an operation that destroys a facility housing Chinese intelligence personnel, and China responds not with threats but with public commitment to the host country's sovereignty, that is not ambiguity, that is not diplomatic nuance, that is a verdict. It is Beijing signaling that American freedom of action in Iraq has reached its expiration date and that China will support Iraqi efforts to enforce that expiration. If you own a business that relies on Middle Eastern oil imports, what is happening in Baghdad is not a foreign policy story. It is a supply chain risk story. If you drive a vehicle or heat your home with natural gas, it is an energy cost story. Because the coordination mechanism that was destroyed last night will be rebuilt within weeks, but it will be rebuilt with additional security, additional redundancy, and additional motivation to demonstrate that American disruption campaigns cannot prevent regional integration. This pattern has repeated throughout history, and every time it repeats, the outcome is the same. The Peloponnesian War. Athens and Sparta went to war for 27 years. Both sides exhausted their treasuries, decimated their populations, and destroyed their fleets. And who won? Neither of them. Macedon, a third power that stayed out of the conflict, rose during the chaos and eventually conquered both exhausted rivals. Athens was trying to maintain its naval empire. Sparta was trying to break Athenian dominance, and while they destroyed each other, Philip of Macedon built the army that his son Alexander would use to conquer the known world. The parallel is exact. The United States is attempting to maintain its Middle Eastern security architecture built after the 2003 Iraq invasion. Iran is attempting to break American dominance and build its own axis of resistance. And while Washington and Tehran exhaust themselves in proxy conflicts, sabotage operations, and sanctions warfare, China is building the infrastructure, the economic relationships, and the diplomatic frameworks that will define regional order for the next 50 years. America is Athens, Iran is Sparta, China is Macedon. The explosion in Baghdad last night is one more battle in a war that neither primary combatant can win, but which the third power is positioned to inherit. So, where does this leave us? Let me give you 3 clear paths because there is no honest middle ground here. Path 1, de-escalation and managed transition. In this scenario, the United States recognizes that its military presence in Iraq is becoming politically unsustainable and strategically counterproductive. Washington negotiates a phased withdrawal of the remaining 2,500 troops over 18 to 24 months. In exchange, Iraq provides guarantees that American diplomatic facilities and personnel will be protected, and that Chinese-Iranian coordination will not be used to target Israeli interests. This path requires political courage in Washington to accept that the 2003 invasion's strategic objectives have failed, and that attempting to maintain influence through covert operations only accelerates American irrelevance. The probability of this path is low because it requires admitting failure, and American foreign policy institutions are structurally incapable of that admission. Path 2, escalation and fragmentation. In this scenario, the sabotage of the Baghdad Coordination Cell is the first move in a broader American campaign to disrupt Chinese-Iranian integration across Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. More facilities are targeted. More Iraqi militia commanders are assassinated. Iran responds with attacks on American bases and Israeli targets. Iraq fractures further between pro-American Kurdish regions, pro-Iranian Shia militias, and Chinese-aligned government institutions. Oil exports from Basra become unreliable. Energy prices spike globally. This path is more likely than Path 1 because it aligns with existing American strategic assumptions that military pressure can prevent adversaries from consolidating gains. The outcome of this path is not American victory. It is regional chaos that harms all parties, including the United States. Path 3, and this is the one I believe we are closest to, quiet Chinese expansion under the cover of Iraqi sovereignty. In this scenario, the Baghdad Coordination Cell is rebuilt within 3 weeks. Additional cells are established in Erbil, Najaf, and Basra. China increases its diplomatic presence in Baghdad and offers Iraq expanded investment in exchange for security guarantees for Chinese personnel and infrastructure. Iran integrates more deeply with Iraqi military and intelligence structures. The United States maintains its nominal troop presence but finds its freedom of action increasingly constrained. American intelligence operations become more difficult as Iraqi counterintelligence, now trained and equipped by Chinese advisors, becomes more sophisticated. Over 24 to 36 months, Iraq transitions from contested space to effectively Chinese aligned state, not through dramatic confrontation but through incremental coordination that Washington cannot disrupt without triggering consequences it is unwilling to accept. I think we are on path three because the economics favor it, the geography favors it, and most importantly, Iraqi public opinion favors it. Polling conducted by the Iraqi Institute for Strategic Studies in February 2026 found that 67% of Iraqis support full withdrawal of American troops. That number was 58% in 2023. It is trending in one direction. When you combine hostile public opinion, economic dependence on Chinese investment, and security coordination with Iran, the mathematics of American presence become unsustainable regardless of how many coordination cells get sabotaged. Here are the questions I want you to take away. First, how many more facilities will be destroyed before American planners realize that disruption campaigns cannot prevent integration when the underlying incentives favor integration? Second, what is China's red line for tolerating attacks on its personnel, and what happens when that line is crossed? Third, how long can the United States maintain 2,500 troops in a country where the government, the public, and the regional powers all want them gone? Tell me in the comments what you think the American endgame is in Iraq. Tell me if you believe Washington has a coherent strategy or if this is purely reactive crisis management. We will keep tracking every development in Baghdad, in Tehran, in Beijing, and in Washington. That is what this analysis does every single day. Subscribe now, share this analysis with everyone in your network who is trying to understand why Middle Eastern stability seems more fragile today than it did 5 years ago, despite fewer troops and lower intensity conflicts. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update as this situation develops, and we will see you in the next analysis.